Hey everyone, it's Habiba. Welcome back to my channel. So in today's video, I'm going to share with you some truths about what I've been experiencing this past year. I've experienced a lot in the past year, and I've learned so much as well. But it's really been a tough year. It's been emotionally and mentally so hard for me. So I thought I would come on here and share some of that with you all. And because I know it will resonate with many, and I was also thinking that people can share some of their experiences with me as well. So it's a sort of opening up that I'm doing right now, and this is not easy for me actually. I've never done anything like this on social media, but I thought that there would be a lot of benefit to it, to sharing this for myself and for others as well. Okay, so here we go. I'm a little nervous doing this because, like I said, it's not something I would typically do. So I'm going to be a bit vulnerable with everyone in just sharing this. In line with the video's title, I'm going to also be talking about the importance of protecting your mind, being kind to yourself, and getting help when needed. So, as everyone knows, the coronavirus pandemic came as a shock to everyone. It just sort of fell into our lives, and with it, we've had to learn how to navigate the stormy waters that it brought with it. And for many, that's meant having to deal with the stresses and pressures of the pandemic while going to school or while going to work. So it hasn't been easy for so many people. I know that because it wasn't at all an easy year for me. And in addition to it all, many found themselves in very stressful environments at school or at work, hostile work environments, toxic work environments. I know I dealt with a lot of that myself. So there's been this double burden of one, having to adjust and adapt to this completely new reality of the coronavirus, and then two, having to do so in very harsh environments, sometimes at school or at work. So the year has been very challenging and at times unbearable for so many people throughout the world. And I know I myself was not an exception. It was challenging for me. It was mentally tormenting. It was emotionally traumatic, and it was honestly one of the hardest years of my life. And not just because I was dealing with the reality of the pandemic and learning to adapt to that, but also because I was dealing with a very stressful environment at work. And again, like I said at the start of this video, it was very hard for me to decide to come on YouTube and share all of this with the world, because I'm someone who naturally and has always been just so resilient. Those have just been the circumstances of life for myself and for people like me, and I'm sure many of you watching this know what I'm talking about. But sometimes we need to show hard times as well, and what it's like working through and navigating hard times, because as human beings sometimes we only like to show the good moments, but the hard moments are part of our life journeys, and sometimes it's important to share them and come together as a community and figure out what mechanisms or tools people have to get through. So please, in the comments, share. And why doing this sort of sharing the hard moments is so important now is precisely because we've been in a pandemic, and we've been through lockdowns on and off, and it seems as if we have more lockdowns coming. So basically what that means is isolation. People have been isolated from each other. You don't have easy access to your friends, to your support system. And so sometimes dealing with these things, with these difficult moments, becomes even harder when all of us are isolated the way. And I'm someone who's used to being strong. I've always, been a source of inspiration for other people, for family, for friends. In elementary school, I was like the cheerleader in the group, supporting everyone, cheering everyone on. I was like the group counselor, uplifting people when others were feeling down. So, this past year, with all I went through, I realized that sometimes strength isn't enough. Your own strength is not enough. You need help from others. And it was also hard for me to acknowledge the feelings I was having, to acknowledge them as they were, that I was feeling sad, that I was feeling down, that I was feeling depressed at times, and whatever I was feeling, because like I said, I'm someone who's used to being strong and carrying on, and so when I was feeling a lot of what I was feeling, and sometimes at a certain point it got so bad, like I felt really broken. Honestly, I'm just being plain and honest here. And it was hard for me to really just let myself feel that, and I'm still learning and trying and, fighting through a lot of these things. It's a work in progress. It's a process, right? One of the things that I experienced in my personal life this year, which was really tough for me, was deception. A lot of deception from people who were very close to me. Some of them friends or just people who were very close to me. They knew me well. They came to my house. I was hanging out with them all the time, shared a lot with them. And just really high level deception, in ways that I could have never seen coming. And it just hit me, and then boom. And it even took me a while to accept what was happening, because I couldn't believe it. I said, no, that's no, and then I fully realized this is the reality, and I accepted it. And of course I had to let go of those people, and even that was so hard for me. And one of the reasons it was so hard and so sad for me too was especially knowing that when you haven't done anything to anyone, and then boom, they'll just sort of come after you. It's frightening. But I think it was very much a lesson for me. And like I said, like I learned a lot this year. That was one of the lessons. I got a lesson in people, in how people can be sometimes, and really sort of having to know how to protect yourself as much as you can, even though sometimes you can't see things coming. But sometimes to try and pick up on signs as much as you can. And to really be careful when it comes to who you trust. You see, that's the thing. You don't want to be so guarded to the point where you close yourself off from everyone and you don't trust anyone and you're paranoid. And some people are like that, and that's simply due to all the bad experiences they've had with people. But it's unhealthy to be like that, So there needs to be a healthy balance. But it can be hard sometimes to know where to strike the balance, right? So on the professional front this past year, there was a lot of stress, like I said, like a lot of mental and emotional distress for me, especially in this time of the pandemic, when everyone has been under such pressure, and many people feeling isolated and all kinds of things, right? Feeling scared, not knowing what the future has in store, not knowing where our societies are going with all of this, and then everyone has had to deal with that, like I said. But then in other areas, to have stress coming from other places too, it was just too much. And so then, like in my personal life, people who I thought had my back really didn't. And like I said, that one was so hard for me, and I really wanted to be in denial about it for a long time, honestly, because I've always been that person to have everyone's back, you know, no matter what. I'm that type of person. Like, I'll stand by you through thick and through thin, through hard times, through good times, you know, stormy weather. I'm there, you know. I'm very dedicated and committed to people in that sense. So, you know, that was one of the very painful things for me that I had to deal with this past year, knowing that some of the people I thought would be there for me when I needed them really were not. And then I kept saying to myself, you know, like, where's the compassion for me too, the way I have compassion for others when it's needed? So then I was wondering too, like, you know, how do people see me? How do people in my close circle see me if, you know, when I experience certain struggles or hardships myself, they're really just not the same, you know, any reciprocity in terms of compassion. You know, it was really such like a really harsh reality for me to face up to, but I had to face up to it, and I'm thankful that I have. And you know, I don't know if people are seeing this or not, but there's right now I see and feel that we're living in a time of such high level deception. You know, there's so much deception, lies, cheating, corruption, hypocrisy around us, and we see it on the highest levels and coming from people who are on top, from our politicians, from, you know, people, influencers, celebrities. We're all aware of the scandals that come up with them almost every day now, you know, cheating, lying, deception, all that kind of stuff. This is at the highest level, we're seeing that. And so then it trickles down, you know, because that's the tone being set from up top. So it trickles down to your everyday person, to people who are around us in our close lives, in our personal circles, friends. You know, sometimes they start acting as in a way that is really morally not okay. You know, I feel as if we're like living in the season of charlatans, and there are some people, they're just waiting for you to give them an open. It's as if they study you, and once they see like a space to sort of wiggle their way in, they'll wiggle their way in and literally try to wreak havoc in your life, and you know, just sort of come into your life to gather as much information they can about you and your plans, and not for good purposes, you know, not to use that information for any good reasons, but literally to use it as a way to hurt you. So, you know, be careful. Like I said, I feel as if we're living in the season of charlatans. And another thing I've had to learn this year is, don't judge people by your own standards. We all have different standards, and sometimes we think, these are my standards. Other people, you know, they must sort of think like this or act in a certain way. They wouldn't possibly act in that way because it's just, you know, like I said, so morally incongruent. But no, don't do that. Just, you know, don't judge people by your own standards. Take people for who they are, and what they show you about who they are is what you have to accept about who they are. That's another lesson I had to take away this year. And when I say this past year was hard, friends, like, I mean, it was hard, you know, crying, this, that, all kinds of things. Really wondering about certain people, you know, like, why are they not reaching out to me the way I would reach out to them? Why am I the only one to call? Why don't they call me? You know, don't they value the friendship the way I value it? All kinds of things. I had some very, very, you know, harsh realizations that I had to accept. You know, especially when I was having those, like, in the gutter, really low, feeling low moments, and I had to find ways to lift my own vibe. And I'm going to show you some of the things I did. Of course, a lot of praying, because I pray a lot, talk to God a lot, that kind of thing. So that helped. But sometimes, and as I say to, some of my friends at times, sometimes you need more than that. You need help, like even professional help at times. You need to talk to someone who's trained in the mind, who's trained in these things, trained in the mind, trained in emotions, who can give professional help. Sometimes you really need that. But one of the things that bothered me when I was feeling that way was, even when I tried to reach out to certain friends, it's as if they were it's like they didn't want to be contacted, if you know what I mean. And this is another thing. I feel, okay, this is just my view based on experiences I've had. I feel some people are really narcissistic. Like, one of the reasons we live in communities and we have friends and we have people around us is to be a support system for each other. And when you notice people in that group or in that community are feeling down, is to lend yourself as sort of a shoulder to lean on for them, like a support. And I felt that some people were being very narcissistic. Like, if you reached out to them to say, hey, how are you, or whatever, or why don't we chat, and it's been a while, catch up, they would be like, sorry, I can't, like, I'm not in the place to whatever. And I'm talking about close people, like people you'd consider a close, like a really close friend or something. And I respect people's need sometimes to be alone or just sort of tune out and not have contact with anyone. I totally get that, and I totally respect that. But I just felt there was an element of self-absorption to it all. And I remember saying to one person, I said, okay, well, this is why we have to help each other. This is why we need to talk. I said, I understand, I get you're going through something. And I said, I am too, which is one of the reasons I'd actually like to talk to you too. And anyway, at that point, I just kind of left it alone. I was like, whatever. But, but sometimes in relationships, you don't get to pick and choose when things are ideal for you, like when times are ideal for you to talk or to communicate with, a friend. That's not how it works. What I'm saying is, like, you don't always get to have things on your terms. And I'm seeing that a lot nowadays with so-called friendships or whatever. So that was one thing that was really bugging me, honestly. So, like I said, in my personal life, that was one of the harsh realities I had to accept this year, was realizing that not everyone is there when you need them to be. And when I say everyone, I mean your close circle. Say just the 2 or 3 people you have in your close circle, and others really don't have your best interests at heart. Sometimes you're the only one really who has your best interests at heart. And it can be hard to accept that, but when you accept that, it's so empowering, And so that was one of the really hard things for me, just knowing that throughout life I've sort of been a cheerleader for everyone, a support person for everyone. And this past year, when I was dealing with such intense struggles, I was thinking, where are those people to be my cheerleader, to be my support person? And they weren't there, I just really had to rely on myself for strength. And I want to say to everyone, it's okay to be vulnerable, to feel your pain, to just feel it and to accept it. Because sometimes to move on to a better place or to get to the next level in your life in terms of whatever it is you want to do, you have to deal with whatever could be potentially holding you back. And sometimes if you fail to feel those heavy emotions like sadness or betrayal or whatever it is you're feeling, if you fail to feel them, to accept them and acknowledge them, they have a way of creeping back into your life when you least expect it and sabotaging your progress, really. I tell myself this, and I tell some friends this sometimes too, because one thing, a lot of people are dealing with hard times right now in their personal lives, and it's shocking, but I'm sure everyone watching this is aware of that. But a lot of people are dealing with rough times, you know. So I think now we really have to lead with compassion and just understand that everyone is dealing with something. And don't be selfish or self-absorbed or narcissistic. A lot of people, they feel like they're the only ones, you know, going through something in life. They're the only ones who are, you know, struggling with something or whatever. And that really upsets me, because it's like, you never know what's happening behind the scenes in people's lives. How can you know? Unless you live with them or something like that. So never assume that you're the only one to feel pain. And some people, they're so, they become kind of cold in that regard. They think like they're the only ones to be dealing with something, and they're simply unable to lend a hand to others, to show sympathy to others. And then sometimes they'll even come to you to just download on you, you know, thinking that you can bear it all. And even when you say to them, yeah, you know, I hear you, and even when you're that sort of listening ear for them, and you might offer some advice, can you talk to someone, whatever, they don't want to do it. It's like they don't want to help themselves either. And then they keep coming back to you with the same problem, and it's like, there's a limit, you know. There's a limit. Sometimes we have to take matters into our own hands and do our best to help ourselves. And like I said, it's okay to seek professional help, to speak to a trained counselor or social worker or psychologist. There's no stigma in that. And for a lot of people, there's shame or embarrassment or so much stigma associated with talking to someone. But like I say, there are people who have spent their entire lives studying the mind, studying human behavior, studying human psychology. They've dedicated their lives to this and to helping people, you know. So why not seek their help if you need to? Because they're trained in this. And after you speak to them, you'll come out like a new person, like a transformed, a different person, you know. And I remember saying to one of my friends recently, I said, suffering, it's not normal. And sometimes people, they think it's normal to be suffering all the time. It's normal to be in toxic environments, in toxic families, in toxic relationships, whatever. And I said to her, it's not normal. That's not okay. For some people, it becomes so normalized because their entire lives have been that, or maybe they grew up in toxic families and that kind of thing, and there's never been an intervention, and so for them that's just like okay. But it's not okay. It's not normal. Ultimately, protect your mind, be kind to yourself, don't beat yourself up about certain things. This past year I was beating myself up a lot about all kinds of things. I was being so hard on myself, and I'm someone who's hard on myself, you know. And it was my mom who actually said to me, she said, you have to be kind to yourself. She said, you know, you can't, there's certain things, you couldn't have seen them coming. Some of these things, they were just sort of the circumstances of life. She said, you need to really be easy on yourself. Because I was really having a meltdown at one point, guys. Like it wasn't, it wasn't nice. So protect your mind in these times, because I feel like we're going to need a lot of mental strength to get through what we have ahead of us. And yeah, you're going to have to be very mentally strong, all of us. And so I'm going to share with you now some of the things that I've been doing in the evenings, just little self-care things I've been doing with books, with even my own surroundings at home, just making it as peaceful and as relaxing as I can, trying to make my home like a little oasis, because the outside world is so crazy and stressful and maddening sometimes. Another thing I wanted to say, oh yes, before I share some of these things with you, what are some of your strategies for developing mental strength in these times? What do some of you do? If you have any exercises, any strategies, you know, we have to sort of hack our brains, hack our minds. Some people, some coaches and some of these self-help people, they talk about like brain hack, mind hack. Yeah, we're really gonna need a lot of that for the times we're living in now. And another thing that just pops to mind, because a lot of people are carrying so much emotional baggage, they sort of take it out on other people. You know what I mean? This could be in the workplace, could be in your friendship groups, could be just some stranger you happen to cross paths with at the grocery store, or the cashier at the grocery store, someone serving you tea at Tim Hortons, whoever, and that's another problem. If you have undealt with baggage, don't take it out on other people. They are not your problem. That's why I say get help. Don't take out your frustrations and your past pains from some parent or from some teacher. Don't take it out on someone who has absolutely nothing to do with that. That's not okay. That's really not okay. So, like I said, because the world can be so stressful and our days can be so stressful at work or at school or whatever it is we do, when I come home in the evening, I try as much as possible to have some sort of relaxation techniques, and I really do love reading. So here's a novel that I finished some time ago. It's called To the Land of Long Lost Friends by Alexander McCall Smith. He's a brilliant, brilliant author. He writes novels, and this one is a really good one. He's the author of this series, The #1 Ladies Detective Agency, and I first discovered his work through the book. I'm gonna get the title for you here. I actually don't remember the exact title, but it has something to do with hair salon, and it's from this series, and so beautifully written. They're all set in Botswana. He's a Scottish writer, but he grew up in Zimbabwe, so very familiar with the cultures of that region, and he writes in the most sort of compelling, beautiful way, and he just has gives such deep insight into the people about whom he writes, So anyway, so this is one thing I just love, sort of. And then another one which I really loved and which I found so useful, and I'd recommend this for a lot of people. It's by Iyanla Vanzant. It's called Tapping the Power Within, A Path to Self-Empowerment for Women. So Iyanla is a very famous coach, spiritual mentor, as I saw in her bio, spiritual mentor. Yeah, so she's really well known in this area. Many of you probably already know who she is. And I took away so many gems of wisdom from this book. It's a self-help book, right? Ultimately speaks to how to tap your power within and really just sort of take your life to the next level. And we all need that sometimes, so we don't sort of become stuck in one place. And there was one thing she said there's so many things she said in the book that resonated with me, but there's one thing in particular that I'm just going to try to find right now and share with you. So here it is. On page 93 she writes, "Suffering, struggling, barely making it from one day to the next is not normal. Living in pain, dysfunction, limitation, and discord is not what God intended for us. In all the years of my traveling, lecturing, and writing, I have met far too many people who live below their potential." So I highlighted that part actually when she writes, "Suffering, struggling, barely making it from one day to the next is not normal." And that's sort of what I was telling my friend, what I told you guys earlier. That suffering and living in dysfunction, living in toxic environments, being in toxic relationships, it's abnormal, guys. It's abnormal, And so many communities have experienced a lot of trauma, okay? a lot of ethnic communities, a lot of immigrant communities, newcomer populations. That's just sort of the, I guess, the nature of these things sometimes, you know, like if, you know, immigration, it's hard for a lot of people, and many of us come from immigrant backgrounds, or our parents had some sort of immigration experience, and then a lot of stuff happens when you're in a new place and so forth. I'm not going to get into that because that's not what I'm trying to talk about, but what I'm saying is it can lead to traumas and dysfunction in certain families. Not normal. Get help. Let there be an intervention so you can take your life to the next level. You know, we all want to live our best life, our dream life. You can't just live your best life like that. You know, to live your best life mentally, you need to be in a best state. Emotionally, you need to be in a best state, because you might be living your best life, whatever that means for people, whatever your best life means. If it means, you know, being very successful in your education, in your career, having a lot of money, driving your car, whatever best life means, living in your dream house, a villa by the beach, or whatever. Materially, you might be living your best life, but mentally and emotionally, if you're not, you're just gonna crumble, and ultimately you won't even enjoy your material best life. Okay, so another book that I'm still reading, The Buddha and the Badass. This one's by Vishen Lakhiani. It's called The Buddha and the Badass, The Secret Art of Succeeding at Work. And Vishen Lakhiani, he's a New York Times best-selling author of The Code of the Extraordinary Mind. And he's a founder of Mind Valley Academy. You guys can check that out. But anyway, he's like a very well-known and reputable life coach. A lot of videos on YouTube, very famous in this area. I'm finding the book very interesting. Yeah, so Vishen was actually, you know, he's a former engineer. He was with one of those tech companies in the Silicon Valley there in California. I can't remember which one. He's a former engineer, and then he started a lot of startups, and then he went into this, into the work of sort of just changing people's lives and helping them live their best life. And there's all kinds of strategies and concepts that he uses to help people get to change their thoughts around certain things, about their life, about work, about what is possible, you know. And he has one term, how to be an with a bull. I won't say it. You guys can find it out yourself. And that one really appealed to me, how to be an, like, you know, how to develop sort of a hard edge, because sometimes we need that in life, developing that hard edge so people don't mess with you. Anyway, I'm still working away at this one, but a good one. So those are just some of the 3 books that I've been reading recently in the evening. So that's one of my techniques, actually, one of my sort of self-care, self-help techniques. So there you have it. Those are just a few of my strategies, among others, you know, just trying to keep my mind healthy, protected in these trying times for everyone. Of course, a lot of prayer and stuff, like I mentioned earlier. A lot of prayer, you know, for those of you who are into praying, perhaps religious or spiritual. I really recommend that one to just sort of help level up spiritually, because we need a lot of that in these times too. And we have to ask for discernment, to be discerning, so that we can know who people are sometimes before you get too involved. That's a really important one. And so you ask God for discernment, to help with that. A lot of discernment. Yeah, thanks for watching, thanks for tuning in, and thanks for listening. I felt, you know, let me come on here and share this. Other people might relate, and share your own experiences, or, you know, strategies you use to help you get through in the comments. And thanks for watching. See you in my next video. Bye.